thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate everybody coming up to high school to talk with us tonight. I'm going to be real quick up here because you're not here to listen to me talk. If anybody doesn't know, I'm Ben Plato. I help run the soccer program. I'm also on the rec board. Just real quick, I'd like to say a couple thank you to everybody in our program that helped make this happen. To Mike Getz at Fallston High School for everything he did to make this happen for us tonight. But without really any further ado, as we're here to talk to John O'Sullivan, walk up the aisle here, John's going to come and talk to us about how to be better coaches and make it a better experience for our kids. So without anything else, John, thank you.
I didn't even have a chance to turn my mic on. Hey, I was passing out these little yellow sticky notes, and I know I didn't get anyone's raise your hand if you didn't get 5 of these. Everyone needs 5. So let me just do these and then kind of pass them across and back, and I'll get some more. That should cover this. Perfect. 5 per person, yeah. So we'll use those in a little bit, but thank you so much for coming out. It's always great. I love working with coaches. Coaching is such an amazing thing that we do, right? We get to influence more people in a season sometimes than other people get to influence in their life. And it's hard. We work with kids, it's public, it's emotional, we keep score, and yet sometimes something that we say or something that we do can stick with a kid for the rest of their life. And so we carry this great burden, whether we're a paid coach or whether we're a volunteer. And so I think it's so important that we're always trying to get a little bit better at our craft, regardless of whether we're working with really young kids, working with high school kids, working with college kids. So I would like tonight to be sort of informal-ish. I have a few things I would like to cover. Mainly, number one, what does quality coaching look like? What does quality leadership look like? Number 2, how do we build great dynamic teams? And then number 3, what do good practices look like? But also, if other things come up, if you have questions, if we take a tangent, that's great as well. So a little bit about my background. I grew up on Long Island. I played college soccer at Fordham University. I played professional soccer in the USL for what was the Wilmington Hammerheads, and I believe now they're actually in Baltimore. I coached Division I college soccer at University of Vermont. I worked in youth soccer for a while. I ran a training center for the Portland Timbers for a couple of years. And now I have the hardest coaching job I ever had. I had 33 12-year-old girls. Right. So I've been around coaching for a long, long time. Now with Changing the Game project, so I started this little thing a couple years ago. I wrote a book and started a blog around coaching and parenting athletes, and now that has just blown up to where, I'm here this week. I fly to Chicago to do the keynote for USU Soccer's Leadership Convention on Friday morning. I go home for 3 days to coach 4 U14 girls soccer games, and then I fly to Thailand on Tuesday. And so this takes me all over the world. It's taken me to Barcelona, it's taken me to Manchester United, and what I love to do is come and share some of the things that I've learned. Now, I'm not here to change you as a coach, or I don't think anyone should come here tonight and say, I'm going to throw out everything that I do, but I hope I can add a little bit to your game. A story I like, there's a strength and conditioning coach named Rhett Larson, and he got hired many years ago by the Chinese Olympic Committee. And they brought him over to start working with a couple of their teams because they were having all these overuse injuries and stuff. And so he said, I came in and I looked at what they were doing from a strength and conditioning perspective. And he said, oh my God, we stopped doing some of this stuff 30 years ago in the West. He said, but here's the problem. If I went and I threw everything out and revamped it all, as soon as one of their table tennis players lost, as soon as someone lost, who were they going to blame? They were going to blame me. So he said to them, hey, just give me 10%. Like, what's my 10%? What's my 15% that you will let me change? Because I know if I tweak this, our athletes will be better, they'll stay healthier, and then I can add a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So he got his 10, 15%. They did better. They gave him a little more. They gave him a little more. His team started doing well. His athletes started doing well. And so 2016 rolls around, and they gave him the one team sport that they had a chance to medal in the Rio Olympics, which was women's volleyball. And they ended up winning a gold medal. He's like, so now I can do whatever the hell I want. Right? But I like that analogy when we talk about tonight is find your 10%. I might cover a lot of different things here, things that you say, wow, I'm already doing that. Wow, I've never considered that. Wow, that's bull. I'm definitely not doing that. Right? That's okay. But everyone can find 10%. Everyone can find 15%. You can find something that you can add. And I challenge you, add that, tweak that, do something different, see how it works. See how it works with your group, and then say, okay, great. And then you come back for more. Okay? So let me ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges that you feel like you face as a coach? And I know there's a lot of soccer coaches in here, but what other sports do we have? Basketball, wrestling, lacrosse, and you said basketball too. Baseball, softball. Awesome. So we have a bunch of different sports. A lot of these are, though, they're team sports without the exception of wrestling, but they're dynamic sports with consistently changing conditions. So I think a lot of this stuff will apply. What are some of the big challenges that you face? What makes it hard to coach? Child meltdown. Okay, excellent. So when our kids aren't there, or some of them are forced to be there, some of them don't really want to be there, or some of them just have behavioral issues. Yeah.
Kids already know everything.
Kids already know everything. Okay. What else? Parents gets the World Cup. Right. So we have a parent issue. What else? Yeah. Coaching your kid. Yeah, that's a fun one. I do that. Right? Yeah, that's great. And trying to switch from being coach to being mom or being dad, and where's that line? And when you're having that conversation, I have these conversations about coaching with my spouse, and I turn around and my daughter's right behind me. I'm like, yeah, right? I'm being coached now. Right? Yeah. Yes.
Feeling overwhelmed by all the details of the game, the details of coaching and people and young players, just trying to do it all well.
Yeah, and the details, right? I think a lot of people who haven't coached, they look at like, oh, well, you show up with a clipboard and you do that, right? And I'm like, I was going to the airport yesterday, and the whole cab ride, I was on my phone answering emails about who wasn't going to be at practice, who was missing the game next weekend, trying to organize that, trying to get guest players, doing all these things. And the cab guy's like, well, you're coaching? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I spend more time doing this than I do actually running practices, right? Yeah. So I see, this is a common theme, and I see these threads run through coaching all over in all sports. And we have this dynamic in youth sports, right? We've all probably heard this number that, youth sports is a $14 billion industry right now. So there's this business of youth sport that doesn't always serve the needs of the child in sport, right? And this is a huge challenge for us as the coach, sometimes the person in the middle, who is trying to serve the needs of the children and the needs of the parents and the needs of the organization and the needs of the league and all these different things at the same time. And it can be really challenging. And then we add in that maybe we're trying to do this in our spare time because we're a volunteer and it's tough. So I think if we start about really thinking about, well, the first thing I have to look at is myself. And what does great coaching look like? And what is the pathway to being a great coach from what kids need? And so I want to start with those little 5 sticky notes. Did we have enough around? Everyone got some now? So if you take out your sticky notes, and what I'd like you to do is this, write down on your sticky notes, 1 per sticky note, the 5 qualities of the best coach you ever had. Right? So 1 per sticky note, the 5 qualities of the best coach you ever had. So you'll fill out all 5. There's no wrong answers. It can be that she was passionate or knowledgeable or a good listener or made it fun, whatever it is. Just write those down. Did you get There. It's probably 5 at least, close to it. There's no wrong answers. He bought me beer is not like a great answer, but if you think like, oh, I don't think I really had a great coach, then maybe a great teacher. That's, after all, what we're doing anyway. All right, so I see some heads coming up. So when you're done, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're going to bring your sticky notes up. Hoping for the best here. I'm not sure if this is going to work. These walls aren't going to work. Here's what we're going to do. We'll use this the stage. If your sticky note has to do with your coach's knowledge of the sport, the X's and O's, the tactics, the technical part, just stick it over kind of by the flag here, so as close to this end as possible, knowledge of the sport. And then if the sticky note has to do with your coach's ability to connect, so this is the emotional intelligence, something like passionate or fair or good listener, stick it on that side over there. So go ahead whenever you're ready. So this is connection, that's their knowledge of the sport. Knowledge, that would be stage left, right? There's not much about that. That's left. This part you can get wrong. Yeah, happens often. Try not to pass the computer. That side's connection, this side here is like how much they do about the sport. Do you have a question about one? Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. No, it's not. Try not to pass the computer, just stuff them over there if you can. I don't know, I mean, I don't think tough is really about X's and O's. I think tough is about, I'm going to move some of these over. Just trying to keep the differentiation. I think Or's that's kind of knowledgeable, right? It can be both, right? You know, because they were organized, it was, fun to be there. Yep. Yeah, so, I didn't move too many. So when we look at this, right, look at the difference between the two. I think this is really, really interesting when we think about coaching. I said don't pass the computer, but some people had to pass the computer. Right? Now we can still see the two sides. When we talk about what makes for a great coach, it's always leaned heavily to this side. Did anyone not put any on the knowledge side? Just show of hands. So this was a couple, right? A quarter of the room or so. I mean, why is that? Like, is there someone who didn't put any there? Is there a reason? It's just not what popped in your head? It's not what came to your mind first. Anyone else have other comments on that? Right? So I've done this activity for coaches of every level in every sport, from Aussie rules football to soccer to basketball to PGA golf instructors. And it's always the same. When we think about the best coach we ever had, it's about connection more than knowledge. Now, that's not to say that knowledge doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Of course it matters. But it's not sufficient. It's not the only thing. When we think about coaching education, when we go and do, become a better coach, where do we spend 98% of our time on? What wall? This one, right? The knowledge one, right? Yet we all just said, no, wait a second. It's about connection. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that what you know doesn't matter. But what I'm telling you is, hey, you guys do my best to sit still. Somehow you got the squeakiest chairs in the whole building. Thanks, guys. What I'm telling you is that we have to connect first. Your players don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And when they know how much you care, and they know that you're all in, then they want to get that knowledge from you. So essential knowledge around your sport is huge, and it's important, and it's critical, but it's not everything. It's not everything. I've watched Pep Guardiola run practices. He doesn't do any magic sessions. He just does normal sessions better than all of us. Right? And this is what coaching is. This makes you a trainer, and this makes you a coach. How many of you, we have coaches of all ages and stages here, how many of you have ever been invited to a former player's wedding? Okay. Just 1, 2, 3, couple, right? Was it because they're like, hey, you taught me the 4-3-3. You taught me to box out. No, of course not, right? It's because you invested in them as a human being and as a person. Right? And you were all in for them through tough times and good times and bad times. And this is so important for us to remember. We're allowed to be tough. Right? How many of you put demanding or tough as one of your things? I saw that on a couple. Right? So it's not about not being demanding. It's not about being all, my friend Bill Beswick calls it, slappy clappy. Right? You can say that's not good enough, do it more. But you can't be demeaning. Right? We can ask a lot, but we can't do it in a way that insults the person, the human being. We can just say that's not good enough, do it again, do it better. Right? So this is coaching. And I think sometimes this gets lost in the quest for knowledge and in our licensing programs, that it's all about the activity that I run, when in actuality, no, yes, activities matter, but my ability to connect, my ability to not coach soccer, but coach Johnny and coach Joey, coach the child, not the sport. These are the things that really lead to great coaching. And we all, I think especially the younger kids that we work with, I remember Steve Highway used to run the academy, maybe he still does at Liverpool. He says, when I'm looking for coaches of young kids, I want someone who understands, children more than someone who understands the sport. So if you understand children and what they need, you'll be able to impart the knowledge of the sport that's necessary. And if you run the right activities, they'll draw it out. So does anyone have any comments or thoughts on this? Anyone want to disagree with this? Yeah.
All right, basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I can teach being the coach of CPs will put their shortest player on the center. He scored every single point in the game. And to me, that's knowledge. You can't put your shortest player on the center.
Mm-hmm.
So they had other
I'm certainly not saying knowledge doesn't matter. I never ever would say that. I'm just saying it's not everything.
No, I agree.
Number two, I would say this. In 9-year-old basketball, right? If you are taking, your tallest third grader and saying, you're the center, don't bring the ball up the court, just play defense and rebound. Are you doing that kid a favor? No.
We don't do that. Yes, I know.
You know what I'm saying, right? So it's like, hey, I'm giving everyone a chance to play different positions, and so
A lot
yeah.
of coaches don't do that.
Okay, yeah, and so we can get into every little detail and semantic, and so again, I would never ever argue that, don't worry about activities or don't worry about what your practice plan looks like. That's not it at all. All I'm saying is that that's not everything, right? Because we can have the best practice plan and the best drill, and oh wow, this, I just got this off breakthrough basketball, and this is awesome, and the practice goes to hell. Because we can't connect with our players. We can't read what's happening in front of us. Okay. There's some research around this. A woman named Amanda Visick from George Washington University. She has done a lot of research on what makes sports fun for kids, and I'll talk about that later with the parents. But here's what those 10,000 or so kids that she surveyed, these were the top 5 qualities of what kids want from a coach. Respect and encouragement, positive role model, good communication, good listener, know what you're talking about. I've shown this list to professional athletes. I'm like, does any of this not apply at the professional level? And they're like, no. Right? And I'm like, I don't want someone who disrespects me or discourages me. I have a friend in Bend, Oregon, where I live, named Ashton Eaton. He won the last 2 Olympic decathlon gold medals. And he used to prepare a 30-page dossier every month for his track coach about his training, and this is what's working, and this is what's not working. Now, if his coach just went, Ashton, I'm the coach, threw that away, that's not a good relationship. But there, coach would say, yeah, I got that, we can work on that. No, we're not doing that, and here's why. So that's that give and take and that understanding, and that coach who listens and invests and is in it for them. So I think this is really, really important. At the top level of coaching in this country right now, let's call it the U.S. Olympic Committee, they've just released what they call a quality coaching framework. So what exactly is great coaching? Because they would say to their coaches, hey, are you a great coach? Of course they are. How do I know? My athletes won 5 medals in Rio. Great, so if they don't win any medals in the World Championships, then we're going to fire you because you're no longer a good coach. Of course they say, no, of course not. Right? So what's quality coaching? So what they came up with these sort of 3 areas. Right? That quality coaching is essential coaching knowledge. That's 3 parts. Knowledge of your sport, knowledge of interpersonal connections, and intrapersonal knowledge. Right? I got to know myself. I have to know me. I have to know what makes me tick, what gets me stressed, what are my weaknesses so I can work on those, what are my strengths, how can I surround myself with mentors, all that. Athlete-centered outcomes is another big one in quality coaching. We used to just say that my job as a coach was to instill competence, right? I teach skills, I'm a coach. But now what they're saying at the highest level or it's Greg Popovich now in basketball is that we have to teach competence, right? We have to teach skill. As coaches, we are responsible for confidence, right? If our athletes' self-esteem, self-worth, their confidence is down, we can't just blame that on them. We have to look at ourselves. We have to understand connection, right? So this team dynamics that play into it, and we're responsible for developing character. Because sadly, at the Olympic level, we've had a few athletes whose talent has taken them to places that their character doesn't necessarily sustain, right? They get caught, drunk and peeing in bathrooms in Brazil, and then saying that they were attacked by terrorists, right? Brian Lockley, right? So this is our job. And then we have to understand the contextual fit, right? So what are the ages and stages of the kids that we're working with? Now, kids in sport, right, they're on 2 paths. They're on sport for participation and sport for performance. And I don't know, I've never met a 5-year-old who's on the performance path, right? Like who's like, coach, I'm here to grind today, right? Let's get to work. No, they're on this sport for, participation. They're there with their friends and everything. And then some go on at different ages and levels to, hey, they want a little more, and they want a little more, and that's great. But we have to understand that context for them. There's this guy, Alfred North Whitehead. In the 1920s, he was a researcher in education and mathematics. And he said something really cool. He said, and he was talking about education, but it really applies to sports as well. He said, we have to think of this as the rhythm of two different drums, right? The context that they're in is the rhythm of two different drums. One of the drums is the rhythm of freedom, the rhythm of enjoyment and engagement. And one of the drums is the rhythm of discipline, the rhythm of learning and things like that. And those drums are always playing, and based on the kids, we have to understand that sometimes one drum plays more loudly. For an entire year or years, that drum of engagement and love of the game and enjoyment and freedom for young kids, that's got to be the drum that's playing. But never at any time does only one drum play. Right? We might be involved in a sport, wrestling, for example, where we want them to love it, enjoy it, but they can also really hurt themselves. So we step in and we teach a little bit and say, do this way before you rip that kid's arm out of the side. Right? In soccer, we can say, wow, this is great. Well, let's stop for a second and see if you kick a ball this way. See if you pass the ball this way. See if you try this turn. Right? So we add a little bit of that drum. And then as they get older, yes, the deliberate practice drum might beat a little more. But it can never be at the expense of no engagement, no enjoyment. And every single day, we have to read our players and say, well, what's happening here as well? I was talking to some of the board members at lunch. So my girls group, I have 2 teams. And the first day of school this year, right, it's a Wednesday, first day of classes, middle schoolers, they all show up. Right, I have my top group first, and I have this fantastic practice plan. All this content that we're going to get through. Disaster. Right? They're all angry at each other. There's been a fight at school. Something's going on. They're tired. They don't like their teachers. They just got up at 6 a.m. for the first time in a couple months. Right? And I'm trying to feed in all this content, and it's just going downhill fast. And I'm getting upset, and I'm getting angry. And I get near the end of practice, I'm like, I'm an idiot. What was I thinking today? So then the B team comes right afterwards. Practice plan goes in the trash. We got 18 kids. You 9 here, you 9 here. Let's play 15, 20 minutes. We'll stop. We'll talk about it. Add a little tweak. Play. Stop. Talk. Add a little tweak. Play. Go home. They had the best practice ever. Like, that was an awesome day. Thanks, Coach, we needed that because we just sat in class all day. Right? And then the next day, my kids, the A team shows up, they're like, Coach, we're sorry. I'm like, no, that was my fault. Right? Because you didn't need that drum that day. You needed the drum of engagement. You needed to just play. You needed someone to say, man, you've been sitting in class all day for 7 hours. Let's just get out and have fun and enjoy the ball. And we can still teach you. We can still learn a lot. Right? And so we are always balancing those 2 drums with our kids. In a club like those of us who are with Fallston, like in this club, some of the performance kids are going to move on to a different club. In our basketball club, it might be the same thing as well, right? In our wrestling. And so we have to realize, well, what is this team and who are we and what do we stand for? But I think far too many people lose sight of the engagement piece, lose sight of the enjoyment piece, lose sight of the fun piece. What makes it fun? Does anyone know how kids define fun? What makes sports fun for them? Can I ask you guys kids? Okay, just making sure. What makes you is fun? Like, is that why you play? Yeah. What makes it fun? Anything that come to mind? Besides getting called on by some adult you don't know? Scoring touchdowns, awesome. So getting to score, right? Is like standing in lines fun? No, yeah. I've yet to meet a kid who's like, yeah, I can't wait. I hope we stay in the line today. Right? You like it? Is it fun when like it's a good practice and it's organized? Yeah. See that? You know, so that sort of discipline and organization, that makes it fun. Is it fun when and thanks for answering all these questions, by the way. Is it fun when all your teammates fool around and no one listens to the coach? No. See, this is another thing. Sometimes as adults we go, oh, fun, that just means fooling around and no one learns anything. But kids say, no, that's not fun. It's not fun when no one listens. So this organized environment, that makes it fun. That makes it good. Right? So we have to look at these things as coaches and say, you know, first and foremost, is it about the kids? Who's in front of me? Who's in front of me today? And what do they need? Right? What do I want to accomplish in this practice? Who's in front of me today? How might I define success? Right? These are all things that we should be asking ourselves over and over and over. So anyone have any questions on that? Thank you. Give him a hand, by the way. That's pretty cool. I would have, when I was your age, I would have just crawled under the seat. So that's awesome. Any thoughts on that? Any comments on that? Finding this balance. All right, so how do we make it fun? So I'm gonna look at this from a dynamic sports environment like soccer, since most of us are soccer people here, but this just applies to basketball and certainly and baseball and softball to an extent as well. So in the grand scheme of things, when you run a practice, do you practice so that you'll be really good at practice? Raise your hand. No. Raise your hand if you practice so you'll be really good at the game. Okay, so this is it. Some people didn't raise their hand at all, so you're just like, I'm just killing time. So I think most of us would agree that we don't practice to be good at practice. We practice to be good at the game. And so what that means is that when we run practices, what we're looking for is what we call transfer. The things that I do in practice need to transfer to the game environment. Does that make sense? Right? And soccer is a very dynamic game. Basketball is a dynamic game. Hockey, lacrosse, right? Baseball in certain situations, very dynamic game. Right? So we need, what we've done wrong, I think, in the soccer world, and the research is really starting to back this up, is we've cut out chunks of what we're going to teach, but we've cut out the wrong chunks. And we've lost a lot of the elements in our practices that really work. So, well, let's do this. Do me a favor and think of 2 songs in your head. And have like one song be a nursery rhyme song. And have the second song be a song maybe on the radio or a popular song that you think people will know. So go ahead, just think of 2 songs. Raise your hand if you got it. If you got 2. Raise your hand. Your mind's like completely blank. Like I can't even think of one. Right? So you have some songs. Can you come up? There's no singing. Yeah, no singing. No singing. No singing.
This little teapot.
No, don't tell anyone. All right, so now you gotta come up with a different song.
It wasn't it.
That wasn't it. All right. So here's what. Here. No, stay up here. No. So what I'm going to ask him to do is I'm going to ask him to tap out the song on the microphone. All right? We'll start with the nursery rhyme. If you think you know what it is, just raise your hand. Right? But if you don't yell out the answer, all the golf people always yell out answers. I don't know why. Right? But if you think you know the answer, just raise your hand. We'll see if he can get you to figure out what song he's tapping. So the nursery rhyme. It wasn't really a teapot song. Changed. Okay, awesome. This man, look at that. Look at that dynamic environment right there. Go ahead. going. Raise your hand if you got it. Raise it high so we can see. Okay, perfect. What do you think it is?
Bingo.
Bingo. So, have you not heard this song? Okay, worse. I saw a lot of hands were not up. So some people are like, I'm just not raising my hand no matter what. Right? Married a little lamb. That's a pretty easy one, right? That's teaching passive, right? Now let's teach, something dynamic, like pressing, right? Or transition play. So now we're going to play your song that you heard on the radio. No one? You think they'll know the song when you tell them? No one knows that one? Did you write that one?
Yeah, it's my
Or how about one that you think they'll know? Not 19.
It's really fresh.
It's like 1920s polka. I don't think they're not. I can help. I can help. You ready? Here we go. See if you guys know this one. You don't get to sit down here. Happy birthday. Not quite. It's close. Star Spangled Banner. Have you heard that one? I believe it was written here. Right? Right? Hear it again. Star Spangled Banner. Now we kind of hear it. Right? It's not an exact replica. Right? First, give him a hand. Thank you very much for coming up. What song was that?
That's New Year's Day.
New Year's Day by U2. New Year's Day. Oh yeah, I bet you some people know that song, right? Anyone know that song? New Year's Day, U2. All right, play it again.
Pretty good.
Play it again. Play it again. No, you got to play it again. Here we go. Let's see if you can hear it this time.
That's the first.
He's done. He's retired. Bono pulls out sometimes too, and he's just like, no, tour's canceled. All right, good. So this is what's really interesting. That was a Stanford PhD study by a woman named Elizabeth Newton, and it was called Tappers and Listeners. And what she said was, she gave a list of 120 songs, and then she paired up people. Some person was going to tap, and another person was going to listen. These are all popular songs, like the Star Spangled Banner. And she said, what percentage of your kids, or what percentage of the songs do you think people will get? And the tapper said they looked at the list, happy birthday and all that, and said 40, 50%. The answer was 2%. Because knowledge doesn't transfer. When you're tapping, what do you hear in your head? Yeah, you hear the song, you hear the melody, you hear the words, and what do you guys hear? You just hear them banging on the microphone. I had one guy who was like, boom, boom. And I was like, what? It's techno. Right? You hear the song in your head, and we hear tapping. Until we know what it is, until we get the picture, and then as soon as he says, it's New Year's Day, if you know that song, then he does it, or if I say it's the Star Spangled Banner, you're like, yeah, now I can hear it. Right? Think about this when you're coaching. You're tapping. You're tapping. Your kids are the listener. Knowledge does not transfer very well. It does not transfer in a dynamic game unless we recreate the dynamic conditions of that game. So what's happened, and the way I grew up a lot, was what we call blocked practice. So we had block practice where we take one isolated thing, and there was a lot of, the literature and motor learning pulled this out a lot and said, hey, take this thing, right, pull it out completely out of context, work on it over and over again, and then you can plug it back into any context you want, and it's going to work. Does anyone here play golf? Are you better on the driving range like me? right? But you plug into the context and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, not so good, right? Think about this. Think about if you wanted to learn balance. And I put a box here and said, come stand on this box, or just a balance beam. And I said, all right, and we're going to work on that. For an hour a day, you're going to stand on that beam. Are you getting better at balance? Sure. And then if I said, okay, great, so now that we've worked on balance, here's a slack line. Stand on that. And we all be on our face. Because we pulled the balance out of the context, the dynamic context. And so we do this a lot in sport and think that then it will transfer back in. So I grew up, doing lots of different activities that worked on this skill over and over and over. So here's how our brains work, right? In blocked practice. We're going to do a math problem. So when you get the answer, just put your hand up. Don't yell it out. All right? So we'll do this in our head. What's 21 times 14? When you figure that out, just put your hand up. Don't write it. Don't yell it out. Golfer. There's 1, 2. Anyone? Great. You got it? Got it? Just put your hand up when you think you got it. Okay. Go ahead. 294. Do you guys agree? All right. Next math problem. Ready? What's 21 times 14? 294. What's 21 times 14? 294. Right? So the first time I asked you, you went through this process, right? You're figuring out, maybe you do 21 times 10 and times 4 and whatever it is, and you add it up. I don't know how you do your math in your head. But your brain goes through this process to figure out how to do something. And then when I ask you to do it again, you already got the answer and you spit it out. This is how our brains work when we block our practice. When we do a simple isolated thing, I'm going to pass a ball. The first time there's something, about the process of getting that motor movement down, but then the second time it's easier, and the third it's easier, and the fourth, and all of a sudden it doesn't require a lot of thought. Right? And that is not an effective way to teach. This is what the research shows. That type of teaching will yield better short-term results. In that activity, I will be able to pass a ball. But over the long term, it doesn't transfer very well, especially in a dynamic context. Okay? What about soccer determines how and where and when I pass the ball? What are some of the things? Pressure, position, who's open, space, where I am on the field, what point is it at the game, right? All these dynamic elements that are constantly changing, right, are determinants of when I'm going to pass it. Passing a ball back and forth to my partner in line has very little application to, can I pick my head up while under pressure and find a pass between two defenders to the correct foot of my teammate, away from pressure, right, at the right pace, with some instruction, and then move afterwards. Right? Now, in this country especially, we think that, unless you can do all these things, you can't play the game. But can you play soccer if you can't kick a ball perfectly well? Sure. Right? Are there some sports that might be dangerous, right? Do I want my first baseman in baseball maybe who can't catch? Nah, I don't know. Right? I might say, no, we're not quite ready to put you there. Right? But there's dynamic elements that we can work into that. And so in our practices, in the best countries, in the Spains, and the Belgiums, and in South America, where they're playing tons of futsal and tons of pickup, everything is centered around, does this look like the game? Does my practice look like the game? And if it doesn't, it's probably not going to transfer to the game. Now the problem with this is that Effective learning is also messy learning. It's ugly. Not messy like Lionel Messi. Messy like there's lots of mistakes. There's lots of things going on that don't look great. Right? Parents come and they love, look at those lines, look at those cones. Look at that organization, look how good it looks. And then they show up the weekend and nothing works, nothing transfers. We say, well, we went over this in practice, but it doesn't mean it's going to transfer. All right, can I get you, oh no, I already picked on you. Can I get you three to come up? Just 1, 2, 3, come on up. Yeah, I already picked on you, so you're free. And can I just get like 1, 2, 3, 3 of you come up? So you three come over here, just make a line behind him, and then you guys make a line behind him. All right. So this is a lot of times, this is how I grew up, this is how I used to run my practices, would be an activity like this. So we're going to do passing, or in this case, we're going to work on handshakes. Right? So what we're going to do is the first person in each line comes to the middle. First person, you shake hands, go to the end of the opposite line. Go ahead. All right, and then we can kind of keep it going. Right? So this is how a lot of our practices look sometimes, right? It's a passing activity. It's a dribble. Oh, keep going, guys. We're doing this for 20 minutes. Right? And we're working on this technique, this good, right? Make eye contact, right? Elbow position, right? Right? So here we are, and we're shaking hands. And you know, I'm a good coach, right? So I know that as a good coach, we can't just work on our right hand. So let's do our left hand. All right, go ahead. Right? So now I have a little uncomfortable element. But this right here is what oftentimes our practices end up looking at. Now I know in soccer, I've never seen, well, I can't ever say never, right? But we don't pass a ball to someone in a game and sprint at him, right? We don't pass and run to the end of the opposite line, but we do this in practice over and over, right? All right, so you guys don't want to do that for 20 more minutes? You're good? All right, so come on together and get in a circle. Okay, so you guys get in a circle. So now you have to link hands with 2 different people and not the person next to you. Go ahead. So cross there. All right, link hands, 2 different people. No one, not the person next to you. All right, we good? All right, untangle yourselves. Go. We're still working on it here. I don't want to go around the country saying everywhere people usually get apart except Fallston. I'll let you guys stop. So give them a hand. All right, give them a hand. What in this thing here, we're still working on our grip strength. But what other elements did we have? We had communication, we had awareness. What else? What was that? Problem solving. That's a good quality to have, right? We'd like our players to be problem solvers. What else? Teamwork. What else? Maybe that, yeah. We weren't waiting in line, right? And when people wait in line, that's usually just another word for fooling around. Or not being focused, right? We started getting a little bit there of leadership, right? Someone taking charge and saying, you step here or you do this. So by playing a game, we still got that motor learning element, but then we added in all these other things to a dynamic environment that looked more like a game, right? So in soccer, how do we create, what's a very basic word for games that we use when we're working on something like passing and receiving and positioning? What's that? Well, we usually use, a lot of times we use the word rondos, right? So it's the word they use in Spain. And that's any sort of numbers up possession game. So let's say you have a team that's not very good at passing and things like that, right? But you want to work on this. Right? You can play 6 against 1. Right? You can play, with my teams, like, I usually start, I like 2 defenders in the middle, but I make them hold a penny. So I've just slowed them down a little bit by holding a penny in the middle, that maybe we can have some success. Because when you think about it, when I'm just passing a ball back and forth, there's none of the cues of the game that tell me things like what? Turn. Do I receive it on my back foot with my hips open? Or do I play quickly back where I got it? Where do I move after I pass it? So a very simple basic rondo, like 4 against 1, right? And you can make that space as big or small as your players need. All of a sudden, does that provide lots of repetitions of passing? Yes, it does. But it also provides the cues that they're going to have to see in the game, right? Where do I show? Where's my defender? Where can I get it? Can I play out of pressure? When I play it there, what angle do I need to give him so that I can play it back the other way? And so we don't just get repetitions of skill or technique. We get repetitions of decisions. And the more decisions that our players make, the more those things will apply to the game. And then the faster it transfers, and the faster that they learn. And so it's ugly, and we don't have lots of success early on. But we keep doing it. We keep doing it. Right? So, question? No? Okay. I was impressed. I was like, yeah. All right. All right, so any questions on that? Anyone want some ideas? Like, let's get a scenario and let's work through how can we teach X, Y, or Z for that. Thoughts? Coach, anything from you? Like, thoughts on the questions that come across your desk?
I've been seeing a little bit more rondos, and I've been applauding that. So I think the KC in the past needs to be a little bit more decision.
Yeah.
And I think a big thing we can talk about is, like I said, lunch on. Don't overthink the defense. You're looking for a defending session. You're looking for best attacking session. You already have a defense session.
Yeah.
Use that as a tool, or you can use it during the show.
Yeah, exactly. And I think these are all really good things. Number one, you don't need a new practice every day of the week for 12 straight weeks. You need a couple of good ones that work well, and that, especially when kids like them. Right? And people say, oh, they'll get bored. I'm like, really? Have you ever watched your favorite movie more than once? Right? You know what the answer is. You know what the jokes, right? I've seen Monty Python 57 times. You know what they're going to say, and I still like it, right? Because it's good. So when you have something that works and kids like, and it gives you this ability to teach lots of things, and it's dynamic, use it again and again and again, right? And tick off your list, right? Does it have engagement, number one? Does it have defenders? Because it's really hard to make anything realistic without defenders, right? I see sessions all the time of people saying, right, oh, my wrestling coach, here's a perfect example, right? Like, if you wrestled against, tackling dummies, would that be realistic? After a while, you'd be like, guys, come on, do it at match speed. But, coach, it's a tackling dummy, right? We don't turn, we don't move dynamically until we add defenders. We can restrict those defenders in their movement and their space, but we still need defenders. We eventually need direction. Right? If we play a directional game, we need direction. And, again, as many decisions as possible. As many decisions as possible for our players. So, I think the other thing, now most of us, who coaches like 12 and under in here? So it's a good portion of people. Those kids, when they go to school and play pickup soccer or basketball or whatever they do in recess, do they say, guys, wait, we need to warm up first? No. So really 12 and unders, you don't need a warm-up. You don't need stuff without the ball. In the club that I work in now, it kills me. I go around, I see all these kids, going through cones and doing all this stuff, and I'm like, they don't need that. They don't need that. They can jump right in, right? We can play, especially the younger the kids are, we can organize our sessions in a whole part whole, right? So we can play first, right? We can play first. Who coaches like 6, 7, 8? So those young kids, right? And so they show up at all different times. So if you try to do an activity at 5 o'clock when practice starts, not everyone's there, right? So as each new kid comes in, you're trying to explain to them what you're doing. You play a game at 5 o'clock, they start running across the park. They start showing up early. They know that, hey, as soon as we have 2 kids, that's a 1v1, and then it's a 2v2, and then it's a 3v3, and then a 4v4, and then that's 2 2v2 games. And just as kids show up, we hand out bids and they play. It solves the problem of people showing up on time. It solves the problem of parents who give their kids sugar in the car, right? Because they certainly don't show up there ready to stand in line and learn something. And then in that first little game that you're playing, you can say to them, okay, let's think we're thinking of attacking dribbling today, right? You can say to them, hey, you know what? Take them on there, right? Could you have beaten them there, right? And then you break it down into an activity and say, hey, okay, guess what? Now we're doing this, right? This is what I'm going to give you some ideas for this, and then we'll play again. With my kids, U14s, they show up and they get in the little rondos, 6v2s, 7v2s. It's just fun. They're joking around. They're having fun with it, but they get moving. And so I'll start practice and say, okay, 3-minute rondo, and you're not going 100% yet because then we stop and we do 2 or 3 minutes of fundamental movement. So we're doing lunges and twists and stretches and hip twists and different movements to get them going. Then we'll play a second set of rondos and maybe we'll tweak the rules. And then we'll do some core stability work, right? So we'll engage their core. And we'll play a little bit more. And then what we'll do is what we call dual force activities. So something like we each grab a ball and we pull on it and we have like a wrestling match. They love that stuff, right? But they're pulling and they're moving. It's all proprioception. So we've now, in that 15 minutes, we've played 9 minutes of rondos. We've done 6 minutes of dynamic movement and warm-ups. And they're ready to go. Right? I haven't had a soccer injury in 2 years with this group. Not one. Now they go to cross country and they show up with pulled muscles. They go to gym class and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and they show up with pulled muscles. But I haven't had a single kid in my group get hurt yet. Now I'm not saying that that's never going to happen. But I'm saying that this is how we can warm up people and get them touches and get them making decisions. Right? Because we're limited, right? Which one of you is like, I got too much practice time, can I give some back? Right? So to make the most of our time, we need to be making decisions in game-like scenarios as quickly as possible. Right? This is what great coaching is. This is what effective learning is. This is how learning transfers. I recreate the context goes into the game. If my practice looks nothing like the game scenario, it's not going to transfer. So you can work on, or as Johan Cruyff said, anyone can juggle, then you can go work in the circus. Right? So we have to create that. Because soccer is not really about technique. Soccer is about understanding of space and time. And so if our practices aren't continuous repetitions of space and time, and then the players who have the technique that within the right space at the right time they can, and making the right decisions, they have the technique to execute it, that's great. And now I can send them home and say, you see how I played you that same pass 5 times in a row, and you try to receive it like this, but your toe's not up, it's down, rolls over your foot, and you lost it every time? Is that something that you can go home and work on? Find a wall, knock a ball against the wall, trap, receive. Go get your repetitions there at home. Right? Pull them out, teach something, teach a skill, but get back into those games. Okay? So make your practices dynamic. Ask yourself, right, would I want to be part of this practice? Would I want to do this? I think sometimes we get into, right, it's about us, but no, it should be about them. And if they are engaged, they'll learn faster. Okay? Any questions on that? You guys I'm not asking a lot of questions. You're laughing at the jokes, but you're not. You good? Yeah.
Do you value having a warm-up as a form of like getting your head into the game? Like I coach, 10, 11-year-old boys, and they show practice, they're all squirrely, but I do have a set warm-up that they do every time, which I feel like helps them kind of get set for the practice. And I make them, do it in an orderly fashion. I think it helps teach them a little bit of mental,
So I think the point is very valid. You need something that says, okay, this is the official start of practice sometimes. And again, as they get older especially, right? Young ones, again, as they're showing up, if they're just playing the game for a while, they're into practice, right? They're playing, they're there, they're burning off that extra energy. For me, for my group, they show up and they play rondos, but when I'm ready to start, like my little 3-minute cycles, we come in and we make a circle, right? And so we all look at each other and say, okay, ready, practice to start. Here's the plan for today. Here's, the core value that we really want to work on today within our practice. I'll talk about that in a second here. And then, all right, let's go. So there should be some sort of pattern interrupt that says, okay, now practice has started. But again, I don't think there's a big issue, especially with young ones, with, hey, they show up and play. And that kind of blends into it. And then when that initial game is done, you bring them in and say, all right, you guys ready to play? Here we go. Does that make sense? Yeah. And some days the game's better than others. Some days you're just like, let's just keep playing. Because this is really good. And some days you're like, all right, they're kind of fooling around. They're not into it, right? 11-year-old boys, they're assassinating each other on every tackle. Maybe I need to kind of bring it back around. So yeah. And then again, it can be different on Tuesday to Thursday. Yeah.
A quick thought on coaching from the sidelines during games.
Coaching from the sidelines during games, excellent. So
8, 9, 7, 8, 9, or in general.
So it's very compelling to want to coach from the sideline, right? Because we want to see success, right? But if we think about it in, again, a dynamic game like soccer where they're being put in situations where they're having to solve problems, it's very, every time you solve the problem, learning has not taken place, right? So, and realistically, if we start thinking about, hey, the game is our opportunity to check and see what we've learned. If I'm joysticking the game, I'm not really seeing, have we learned this yet? I'm just seeing, hey, can they listen quick enough to solve these problems? And so this is hard. And again, we live in a country where, a basketball or a football, American football would be a very coach-centric game, right? Run 10 steps, turn around, maybe the ball will be there. But I think in soccer specifically, in lacrosse, in hockey, it's these dynamic movements. When you think about what does a player have to do? In a split second, they've got to assess the situation, come up with possible solutions, pick one, add some deception, technically execute it, and then assess their choice that fast. So they can't really take a lot of coaching. So I think you can coach people off the ball, right? So I'll coach my outside backs or my goalkeeper. And what I'll say is, hey, where should you be now? Right? And if I've taught it, I'm hoping that they okay, well, I got to pitch in or whatever. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I've never, seen a player at the back post way off her player with her hips this way and someone sneaking in behind her and raise my voice a little bit to rectify that situation. But if I do that over and over and over, she's not learning that, right? And so this is, I think, our challenge as coaches is can I, if this is a dynamic learning environment, then I need to let them learn, right? Was that a question, or are you telling me I got to be done?
Well, we have a bunch of people coming in, so
Awesome.
we hope everybody's staged for the second portion. You want to talk about what the coaching was about? But
Cool,
I'm
so-
going to let people in because they're expected to be in about within the next 5 minutes.
Perfect. There I go. So here's here's my thoughts. In this next session, I'm really going to talk to parents about how they can help their kids in sports, how they can work with us as coaches, how they can embrace the desirable difficulties that sports gives them, how they can give their kids ownership of this experience, because ownership promotes engagement and stuff. I'm going to talk about some of the things that cause kids to drop out and some of the things that they can do. So, thank you for your time. Let me just put up my contact info for you. So there's all my info. If you have a long commute to work and you like a podcast, we have a podcast called The Way of Champions. Some of the top coaches, athletes, sports scientists, and all this learning stuff comes out every Monday. We're about 76 episodes in. There's my direct email, Facebook, Twitter. The yellow link there has a link to all our blog posts. Our blog gets a couple million visitors a year. And so that has all our blogs. There's for coaches, for parents, for athletes, things like that. There are some books outside for 15 and stuff like that. But if you stay, it's a different talk for sure. We just kind of scratched the surface here tonight. So hopefully I can stay connected to your staff, help you guys out, because I really appreciate everything that you do for our kids, because I know it's not easy, but it's really up to us to make a difference, and then the kids need us to put their needs and values and priorities first. So thank you guys so much.